Hi everyone, this is Kyle with K-Debate. I wanted to do a video on something I just saw earlier today, which was Bill O'Reilly's newest episode about Obama. And the stuff, I watched the entire thing, and I was a little concerned about the way he was wording things and the way things he was insinuating. When I don't like Bill O'Reilly's the way he performs his stuff. It's very A, B, C, leading a thought process instead of explaining an idea and letting other people come to their own conclusions. It's very, this happened and that means this must be true. And in some ways, when you're using factual basis, that can be very effective, teaching somebody, science or math or something like that. A always equals B. But what he was doing was he was insinuating that because of Obama's history in where he lived, what his family, his father was a Muslim and his brother is a Muslim, and he attended a Muslim wedding in Muslim garb, that he must automatically sympathize with not just Muslims, but extremist groups. And that because he has these ideas, that he must be sympathizing with terrorists that are hurting people and hurting. It's this weird insinuation because he doesn't outright say it. He's just saying because of these ideas, there's something there, and that kind of insinuation is extremely unfair to make, especially for somebody calling themselves a just any kind of media. Like you're the news. Why are you saying these things without, you're not allowed to do that and still call yourself a journalist or still call yourself, unbiased. And that's the issue I have with it, is this insinuation that because you have a family member that you support because of their religious, practices. I support my Muslim brother and I attended his wedding, therefore I must support all people that call themselves Muslims no matter what they do. That's not how that works. That's not how you can't connect those two things. And I was reading the comments because I saw it on Facebook. I was reading all of the different reposts with different captions and different arguments and people linking things that are tagged with the same thing, and I saw a very large amount of people saying that Obama was a Muslim, that Obama was a terrorist, that Obama was, and they kept using his middle name, Hussein. And they kept saying extremely bigoted things, and there were some people that were on the opposite side, just trash talking Bill O'Reilly as pretty much defecating mouth that has a news program. And so you had both sides, both extremist sides, as though Bill O'Reilly is trash, Obama's a terrorist. Just those two things. And that's how the media works, is instantaneous response, no real thought process put into it. I am passionate about this, therefore I'm going to, vomit at my computer. And both sides. And you can't call O'Reilly trash. You can say I disagree with him and I think his practices are damaging, or I think his practices are X, Y, and Z, and you can explain why. But people don't do that. And you could do the same thing as Obama's not a Muslim because he's a practicing Christian, and you have different arguments, you have different ideas, and if you don't listen to the other side, like you say, okay, your side is automatically wrong because I disagree with it, that's not how arguments work. So getting onto the idea of what I saw. What I saw was an ideologue, somebody that's pushing an agenda, and that they don't care about the accuracy of their statements because it doesn't matter. You just have to push your agenda. Doesn't matter. Nothing can get in the way of that. That's why there's so many divided factors in these discussions. You have the extremist A, extremist B. You have the wing nuts that are C. You have the conspiracy theorists that are D. And you just have all of these different ideas throwing everywhere. Nobody's listening to anybody, because they're all ideologues. They have this idea, and that nothing else matters. Now, that's why I don't like somebody that says A means B is true. Attending somebody's Muslim wedding does not make you a Muslim. It does not make you a terrorist sympathizer. And that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because another thing he addresses is the phrase radical Islam, which is a phrase that a lot of people want to use, and that Obama refuses to use. And he explained just maybe a month or so ago why he doesn't use that phrase, which is because it has the potential of simplifying the idea of Islam with Muslims with terrorists. And because radical Islam, the faith, is 1 billion something people, and a very, very small amount of them are terrorists. Very, very small amount of them are even remotely radicalized or even remotely hating America. The United States caused the destabilization there. We attacked their leader and killed their leader. And there was a lot of reasons for why we did that, but, arguably there was very, very bad reasons. And we caused this destabilization that allowed for the terrorist groups to get power. We supplied one group of what we considered allies, and then they turned on us and used their weapons against us. So we attacked them, and now there's American weapons everywhere. We caused a lot of the problems. The United States, by meddling with politics, by meddling with ideological regimes and attacking people or supplying people that we just assumed were on our side or against us, simplifying the concepts of their devout nature in whatever they believe, because we don't know what they believe. When we did that and we caused all of these problems, and now there's bigger problems, the Muslim faith, they have their own problems. Christians have their own problems. The Jewish people, all of the different kinds of groups have their own problems. Everyone has their own pockets of radicalized people that are evil, that are trying to hurt other groups. And the Muslim faith, the Islamic faith, isn't inherently evil. Just like the Catholic Church isn't automatically all full of pedophiles, or the Jewish people aren't all money grubbing, and you have all of these simplified, racist, bigoted ideas. And when you simplify or potentially simplify something by throwing a catchphrase at it, because when people use the phrase radical Islam, there is a disproportionate number of people that are just referring to Muslims, that are just referring to all Muslims. And it's this really weird, we should kick them all out, or we should imprison all of them, or we should kill all of them. But they're not talking about just the terrorists. They're talking about the potential terrorists. And I'm slightly off screen. The potential terrorists. And when you get into that can of worms, potential terrorists to a lot of people's minds is anyone who identifies as Muslim. And so then you have the ban on Muslims entering the country. You have getting cameras into mosques, or putting people to that person's suspicious looking because he has a turban on, or you get into the bigoted, government issued practices that are extremely dangerous. And because you can replace Muslim with Christian, and you have the biggest scandal in the United States history ever. Replace it with the Jews, and you get another huge scandal. You replace it with the Japanese, you get the internment camps, the concentration camps that we had when we were at war with them. We had those, and we took the land from them and imprisoned them. We did that because we were afraid of them, because we assumed that they were enemy combatants, which is the most simplified. There's no word that isn't offensive to use in that context. There's no way to explain the bigoted practice of a government of our size. Like small ones you can excuse because they don't have a lot of diversity sometimes. But we are a country based on diversity. We are a country whose constitution, the amendments, the freedom of religious practice, we are founded on a lot of weird things, but we have pushed the idea that we are inclusive. We have pushed the idea that we are great because of our diversity, because of our in our all-encompassing, anyone can join idea that we have not been practicing in recent years. We have an enemy, even before, if we have an enemy, we become afraid and we do something horrible to that group. We did it with the Japanese, we did it with the Russians, we did it with the Muslims. And every single time something happens, we associate it with the simplified idea that is all of them. That just because this group doesn't like us, and even if they declare war on us, that doesn't mean the people in the United States are going to just jump ship. We're not a hive mind. Humans don't have a hive mind. You might have people that jump on the bandwagon of, oh, we're at war with X. I am part of X because of my nationality, my ethnicity, or whatever. I'm going to automatically side with my people. Yeah, you can have that, but that's not automatic. It's not something that the government government is meant to protect us. Why are we using this protective bubble to kill people or to hurt people that are innocent? And that's why I think, and why President Obama has explained why he doesn't use radical Islam, is because it's not the United States or the world against Islam. It's the United States against terrorist groups. It's the world against terrorist groups that are not Islam. They're not, they're primarily recruited through the religious practices because it is a very ignorant area. There's really not a lot of schools. There's not a lot of places for people to get an education on what is true or not, so they just kind of listen. Propaganda is really, really powerful. And when you have people using phrases like radical Islam, it sounds like Islam is radical. It sounds like we hate Islam when we don't. So it's just a poorly worded phrase that doesn't need to be used. It can be used if you have the context and the clarity so that you won't get misunderstood, but why not just call them terrorists? Why not just call them people that identify as Muslim but are pushing an ideological, political, terrorist group and recruiting from the mass ignorance and fear of the outside world destroying their faith? You can say all of that, but you have to be clear. You have to say that this isn't all of them. And a growing number of people, which is terrifying, are identifying terrorists as Muslims and Muslims automatically as terrorists when that is not true. Not by any means is it accurate. And you can argue, using radical terrorism isn't automatically bad, as long as you have the clarity. But you can't demand somebody say it, otherwise they're a sympathizer for terrorists. You can't say that. That is really, really bad. So all of these insinuations from Bill O'Reilly were he's a sympathizer because his brother and father are Muslim, that he attended a Muslim wedding in Muslim garb, that he is, for those reasons, a sympathizer for Islam, and that Islam should be considered a simplified radical Islam instead of just calling them terrorists. And you can argue very small points that he's not 100% wrong when he says those things. Maybe Obama does have a soft spot for his brother or for the Muslim faith in general, because he's been around it. Anyone who's been around a group long enough that big can see that there's good people in that group. There is no large group that is 100% bad people. Even Nazi Germany had people that didn't like what was happening and were trying to fix it. Even they, as horribly corrupt and driven to exterminate, they weren't all behind it. Some people hated it and wanted to fix it and wanted to make it better. And like patriots in the United States. Patriotism does not mean you automatically agree with everything the government does. That's more nationalist. But patriots want the world, their little bubble of country, to be the best it can be. And that's what patriotism is. You don't necessarily agree with the government. You agree with what you believe is good, and you push for that. And it can be used for bad, it can be used for good. So you have these people that are identifying Muslim communities as terrorist whatevers, and they're getting attacked. They're getting profiled. They're getting people putting cameras in their areas so that you can watch them, because they're automatically more dangerous than something else. And that in itself is dangerous, because then those people are actually being targeted. Why would you hate America just because America is taking away your rights, abusing your humanity, dehumanizing you? It's just, why would you subject innocent people to that because of fear? Which is what is happening, fear-mongering. And ideological agendas that push they are our enemies is a type of fear-mongering. Is like, they're in your communities. They're planning something. They know something. They are involved in something, and you must be, vigilant and stop them. And our leader is one of them, so we must get rid of him. And he's not outright saying Obama is a terrorist, though. Trump, I somehow forgot his name. Trump has insinuated that he is. Several times he says that he's either incompetent or there's something else there that we need to look at that means something really bad, and that's insinuating that he's a terrorist. It's very, very clear that that's what he was insinuating, whether he accepts or denies that was an insinuation. That's what was happening. And I don't think those kinds of insinuations are good, because they have no basis in fact. They have no basis in reality. It's fear-mongering. We have an enemy, and because you're not fighting our enemy the way I think we should, you must be one of those enemies. And that is not an inclusive idea. That you can hate Obama, you can hate Hillary, you can hate Trump, you can hate anybody, but you can't just automatically call them a Nazi, terrorist, murdering whatever, and treasonous whatever. You can't just say that. You have to have a reason for why, an explanation for why, and you can present that, and then it allows for discussion. But that's not what's happening. People don't discuss things very much. You hear talking points, you hear, voice clips, sound bits, responsive, just massive, who's right? Take this poll. And the polls, public opinion, popular opinion doesn't make something true or not. It makes something believed. And you can believe that the world is flat, or you can believe that something, the government is out to get you all the time, but that doesn't make it true. Though in this case, if you're Hispanic or Muslim, then you might be accurate in that in a few years, but it doesn't make it right either. And I shouldn't make a joke about that, but it's just so ridiculous. Jokes can stem from the ridiculous horribleness that is happening right now. And I don't like terrorism. I don't like terrorists. I don't like terrorism. I think that it is one of the single worst things in the world, because you are brainwashing people into killing other people because of in a lot of respects, the leaders of the terrorist groups are political. They're not religious. Some of them are. Some of them are just zealot psychos. But a lot of them just want money and power and their political ideologies to be presented to the world in a way that's influential, so they get more power and more money, and because they hate so much. But a lot of them are just in it for the money and the glory and the power. But the followers, the people that are uneducated or that are just passionate about the wrong things because they see the propaganda and they get filled with it, those people are victims. Like, they're horrible, murdering people sometimes, but they're victims of this unfair, like a person that grows up in the ghetto and has to join a gang to survive, kind of. They're also a victim. They're a victim of the society that they grew up in, the ideological pressures. If I grew up in a country that was just driven by this one idea, I might fall into that. No matter how much my nature might be against it, I might fall into that. And I believe that, while Islam is not a thing that presents violence as the only answer, I believe that that's a misinterpretation by people that already that hate it already and are just looking for something else to say. Oh, look, it says right here to kill people. Well, the Bible says the same thing in certain places. Old Testament says that all place. But because that's really what the Quran is. It's just a different version of the Old Testament. The New Testament is something else. But um, when you have this ideological idea that your faith is very important, like that it's a theocracy over there. They have their laws are based off of their religious book. Like we have a very similar idea, but we try to have that differentiation. But in a lot of ways, we don't care. But they have it in their pretty much their constitution is this, their Bible is their constitution kind of thing. But when you have another group, a separate group that is not the government, saying that because your religion is so important, follow us because we're the ones that are going to make it happen. We are the righteous ones. So they're trying to take power away from the government as saying the government's weak, the government's wrong, the government's bad. We are the true followers of what they say they're following. Because the government is a theocracy. It's literally following what their book is. And then these terrorist groups show up and say they're not following their thing. It says right here, we should go kill these people. And then they just recruit. You have the most extreme people. And it's easy for us to say that's stupid. All of the people are evil. They just want to kill people. That's not what's happening. What they're recruiting from people that feel like victims, that feel like something's wrong, that they're not being treated right, or that their religious whatever is not being fulfilled. And you have these people that are being manipulated into indoctrination, which is an extremely powerful thing. I know people that have been indoctrinated into different fields of thought that they don't agree with at first, that they don't want to be part of, but pressure and social ideologies and the religious stuff that's being pushed on them changes who they are. And I made a video about it before where I know somebody that was just flat out brainwashed, and it was horrible. It was horrible to witness, and then I got away, and I came back, and they were not the same person. And I know a lot of people won't be able to identify with that indoctrination is just, they're just weak-willed, or they want it to happen. No, that stuff is real. That stuff is scary, and especially when you have terrorist groups recruiting young people. They have propaganda everywhere. They have groups that they just kidnap and then force into their ranks. They have fear-mongering. They have fear, just grabbing people and saying, if you don't follow us, we're going to kill you. They have, exterminations where they just round up everyone, join us or die. Join us or we'll kill your family. Join it. Those kinds of things happen. So you have the most horrible of the horrible leaders that are not in it for what the other people, the lower people that are actually doing these things, what they want. They don't necessarily want violence. They want peace. Their idea of peace has been the only way to get it is through X, Y, and Z, which is the leaders telling them to do that. So it's not all Muslims. It's not all Islam following people. It's the leaders that are abusing the ideas and pushing these ideas. And that's why it's not us against Muslims. It's us against these people that are pretending to be Muslim, pretending to be, or using the idea of, you could be a Muslim and a bad person. You can be a Christian and a bad person. You can be anybody. You can be an atheist and be a bad person. That doesn't make all of them bad people. So when you say radical Islam, you have to clarify, you're not talking about all of Islam. You're talking about the radical terrorists. But that requires an extra step of clarification. Just call them terrorists. Just call them, the scum of the earth. Just call them indoctrinating, Islam pushing, radicalized people. They're not actually of that faith, because they're not pushing the faith anymore. They're pushing the radicalized, very specific, their line of what it's like the Westboro Baptist Church. They're not actually Christian. They are not actually anything. They're lawyers that get millions of dollars for their lawsuits, and that's what they do. They picket and picket and picket, and they scream the worst stuff ever that they say it's religious based, but they're really just doing it so somebody will punch them and they sue them for all the money they have. They make millions of dollars. That's what they do. They're not a religious group. They're a hate group. They're a group that pushes hate so that they can get stuff from it, which is exactly what the terrorists are doing. They spread hate and fear and ideological misinterpretations of their holy book to get something. They're not doing it for Allah. They're not doing it for people. The lower people are, because they don't know. They're just following what they're told, because that's what people do. They're not getting an education. They're just following what they're told. It happens everywhere. But you can't say that it represents all of them. You can't. So when I see O'Reilly posting that this is true, that this A, B, and C is true, you can't do that. And I almost said I'm offended, but that's just a stupid way of wording it. I am appalled by the insinuations that because somebody doesn't use a phrase that you demand they use, that they must be associated or sympathetic with a group that murders people. That's not how that works. And that insinuation demeans that person. It demeans the idea of what they are trying to do. I don't think Obama likes terrorists. I don't think he likes them at all. They kill people. They hurt people. They do horrible things to innocent people. And if you are insinuating that he is sympathetic to them because his brother is Muslim, because his father is Muslim, because he attended a wedding, and there's photos of him looking like a Muslim, that must mean he is a Muslim. That's the jump of the insinuation. Because insinuating that he's sympathetic towards and posting pictures of him looking like a Muslim when there's already that dogma, that stigma, that idea that he is a Muslim terrorist trying to undermine the human American whatever, that he's trying to help the terrorists, and what the terrorists are doing is dehumanizing. So that's why I said that. But that jump is everywhere now. It's always like, since he came into office and people were saying, oh, Hassan Obama, and it's just, he's not the most American, like he's not white, or he's not whatever reason you can do. You have the racists that say he's black. You have the racists that say he's Muslim. You have the racists that say he's Hawaiian because he was born in Hawaii. You have the people that say, oh, his birth certificate was fake, that even if it's not fake, he's still a sympathizer. Even if he's not a sympathizer, he practices Islam. Even if he's not practicing Islam, he's aiding the terrorists. Even if he's not aiding the terrorists, he's undermining the whatever. And you just have these people that are just, they vote. And the people that are pushing for them to vote on these different ideas, that these racist or bigoted ideas, are wrong. You can't do that. It's fear-mongering. It's hate-mongering. It's spreading misinformation for your own benefit, which I find appalling. And that's why when a journalist, when somebody on a news program who calls themselves unbiased, who says they're not picking and choosing different ideologies, they're just saying it like it is, or they're just presenting the facts, or they're just saying what the people need to know, news, they're wrong. And I find that appalling that they would still hold themselves to such a high regard when they're spouting wrong stuff. So I'm not going to say offended, because offended implies that it's just, oh, I'm too sensitive for this. I find it to be damaging to everyone. You're hurting people. It's like, oh, I'm offended by the terrorists. No, you're not offended by the terrorists. You're appalled by the terrorists. I believe that this kind of ideology, that you push your own agenda, you want him out of office, you want his ideologies, Obama's ideologies removed from the Constitution, or whatever you think he's doing. I don't even know what you think he's doing. I find you to be the problem, because you're pushing an ideological agenda without facts. So you're part of a problem, because you don't care if he is or not. You care if people believe he is or not. And that's what you're doing. That's what happens when you push an ideological agenda. And it bothers me a lot. So that's really it. That's what I have to say about this. Is it's not fair to say. And insinuating all of these things is just bogus. It's bad. And to call yourself a journalist on top of that, you are having your cake and eating it too. You're saying you're unbiased while presenting biased information. You're saying you are above the conflict pretty much while you are part of the conflict. You're spreading hate while you're saying that person's spreading hate. And it's just all of this hypocrisy that I very much hate. And just on top of it all, there being this idea that they're above it. And I hate it. If you're part of the media, you can't do that. So that's really it. I'm at 30 minutes right now in a few seconds. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. I hope at least somewhat that it made sense. And I'll see you in my next video, and peace.